Hi, welcome to our next segment of Ask the Coach. Today we're going to talk about golf. I get a lot of questions about golf and how to work out for golf, what's appropriate. And I've got a lot of experience with golf, as well as other rotational sports, which is where we're going to start. The first thing is rotational sports, really, all in all, are pretty much all the same as far as what muscles are required to produce rotation. And the two primary movers for all rotation are the glute and the lat, this large muscle across the back. And actually, your right glute attaches through a fascia in your lower back and goes across your lower back to your left lat, and vice versa. So that means, let's take a baseball swing for instance. What happens is your first thing, okay, is a big hip turn, and then you get an elbow pull. Okay, so you get that same thing in, let's say, a slap shot. You get a hip turn, elbow pull, and basically the exact same thing in golf. The only difference is what position you're in. You also get that in throwing sports. For example, shot put, the discus, hammer. All right. So rotational sports are pretty much rotational sports, and then the big thing is, are all the right muscles strong? Are all the right muscles flexible? And then beyond that, just practicing the sport so that you maintain your touch as you get stronger, and you're going to have good performance. Very, very rarely do you get into a situation where you are too big for the sport. So that's usually not an issue. Okay, that's why you see professional NFL players who go play golf, and they're okay. They're not they're not great. But that's not their primary sport. I had a thrower at Tennessee who was a distance thrower, number 2 distance thrower in the world, 6'2", probably 230 pounds, female. All right, so she's big, pretty big female. Very, very strong, very muscular. She was probably my size. Great golfer. All right, great golfer. Why? Well, she threw a discus 220 feet, so 215, 220. I think her PR might have been like 218, something like that. So in that range. So again, not really a big issue. Now, does that mean as a golfer you want to lift for size? Absolutely not. Definitely not. So a big, a question I get pretty commonly when people come to me about golf, they say, Jeremy, it sounds like you understand what needs to happen. You're kind of a big guy. And I go, hey, I've always been a big guy. I was a competitive Olympic weightlifter. I was a big guy in high school. If you're not a big guy, you probably don't have the genetics to be a big guy or girl, all right? So if you're 5'9" and 150 pounds, I don't think you really have a big issue worrying about, or need to be worrying about being 5'9" and 250 pounds. It's just not, it's not in your genetics. Now, does that mean you can't put on 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds of muscle? 20 is probably pushing it, and that would be if that was your goal. If you say, okay, I want to put on that much muscle. And now we're also talking about years, not weeks, not a year. The next thing is the type of lifting that you would do to get better at golf, okay, is not going to put muscle on you. It's not going to be the primary effect anyway. So, and the amount that it does put on is going to be pretty slim. All right? It's kind of like an Olympic weightlifter. All right, so again, I was an Olympic weightlifter for 7 years. You didn't lift to get big. If you got bigger, you went up a weight class. If you go up a weight class, you got to lift more weight to win. So the goal is to stay small and lift as much weight as you can at your weight class. And you're going to do some similar stuff. The other thing is, a lot of the things that you'll do are not just lifting for purposes of getting stronger. They're lifting for structural balance, both from a strength perspective between the right and left side and the front and back side, as well as from a flexibility standpoint. So like a split squat, for example. The other thing is single leg work, because you're working on being able to transfer energy from the hip. All right, so your right hip is going to create a push-off motion. That's very similar to the same motion you get when you're standing on one leg. All right, so working on some one-leg stuff is great. What about all the flexibility stuff that you see prescribed by a lot of these programs out there? All right, so I've worked with some of these programs, and most of what they give you is flexibility work. You don't get a lot of lifting exercise, and what you do get lifting-wise tends to be like cables and bands and balls. A lot of rotational work, things like that, and it doesn't mean that those aren't good to do, but they're not your primary movers, okay? So the rotational stuff you do with a cable or a ball tends to focus on this area, and this is an energy transfer part of your body. It's not an energy producing part of your body. So what that means is that the hips produce the energy, the hips and the lats produce the energy, and the torso transfers that energy. Okay? So you need all this to be strong, but you really don't need to work it rotationally that much. Now there's some good exercises that you can do that are good transfer motions or transfer exercises to help take that energy that you, that increase in energy that you've produced, and now transfer it into your golf swing or whatever other rotational sport it is that you have. So putting all that together, making sure you have good flexibility, making sure all of your accessory muscles, or I should say accessory exercises, these are exercises that work your small muscles, the rotator cuff, the hip flexors, making sure those hip flexors are strong as well as flexible. The hip extensors are strong as well as flexible. And your hip stabilizers like the tensor fascia lata, glute medius, things like that, piriformis, all of these small muscles around the hip are strong and flexible, so that allows you to get into the motions that you need to be able to get into to have a good golf swing. So all in all, what you get if you're doing the right stuff is, one, you have a more powerful swing. Okay. Two, you have better endurance, you have better muscular endurance, which means that over the course of 18 holes or 36 holes, that you're able to maintain that powerful swing with good mechanics. Okay, so if you're not doing the right work, you're not working on the power endurance, okay, then what happens is over the course of that day is your mechanics begin to fade. They begin to break down. The reason why is because you're getting fatigue in those power muscles. And they're not able to perform the same way. So you want to be able to develop that as well. Taking all this stuff, putting it all together, combining it with things like ART, so you're releasing tight muscles that may be inhibiting your swing or causing some quirky things to happen in your swing, which is very common. I promise you, if you have some scar tissue in a joint or around a joint in a muscle that's creating some tightnesses, you can work on your swing 15 hours a day and it's not going to get better. And the reason why is because you may get some temporary improvement as the muscle warms up, but over and all, you're not going to get any long-term improvement. And the reason why is because that scar tissue needs to be broken up so that it's no longer an inhibiting factor, so that you're having good flexibility all the time, not just after the muscle's warmed up. Two, again, once you break it up, and with your training, combining those two things together, you're actually going to increase the neuromuscular, or improve, I should say, the neuromuscular coordination. So in other words, how the nervous system interacts within a muscle, how it contracts a muscle, what order of sequence you get with firing of motor units as well as the firing between those different muscles. And as the tissue gets healthier, you get better inter and intramuscular coordination, so you're going to have better mechanics again. So combining all that stuff, sure, you do want to do some of these rotational exercises that you do see. You do want to do a little bit of flexibility work, but not focusing completely on that. If you're doing the right work with your lifting, you get that with it. You're getting flexibility with it. You're getting balance with it. Not just balance, 1 foot balance, but balance between muscles, which is the most important thing, is making sure you're balanced, structurally balanced all the way around. And that's important for any athlete. So that's the thing is, training for better athleticism is training for better athleticism. You have, especially in a young athlete, you have very little need of doing sport-specific stuff, which is a huge issue. You see a lot of people going in 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old athletes who've never worked out before, and they're doing sport-specific work already. Well, that creates imbalances, which means, sure, maybe they get a little better now, but 5 years from now they have an injury that puts them out of the sport altogether. Or it creates issues where, like back pain is a perfect example of that. Okay, I have these structural imbalances where I've done all this sport-specific work and haven't done any general work, and now, 5 years down the road, now I have back issues, and I get halfway through my 18 holes and my back's hurting so bad I can't hit the ball. So that's a very common thing. You see people do that, not just in golf, we're using that as an example, but in any sport where you see people doing sport-specific work too often. You really shouldn't be doing any sport-specific work, or very, very little sport-specific work, for the first 4 years of your training. Because during that first 4 years, you're creating your structural balance. You're basically creating a base athletic body that you can now, take that base of athleticism Now you can start throwing in some sport-specific work. You still need to do some of the basic stuff, but now you can start adding in some sport-specific work to work on, okay, again, transferring that motion into the golf. So now I might have you use a weighted golf club, but I never had you do that before until you had that basic athletic motion down, or that basic athletic foundation built. I hope that clears some things up, and I appreciate you joining us for Ask the Coach today, and we hope to see you again next time.